The year is coming to a close. One of my most viewed videos this year was my retrospective look back at the Fable franchise, a video I worked so hard on and I'm very, very proud of. I'll link it below if you're yet to see it. So I felt it was appropriate to go out of 2018 the same way we entered it, talking about Fable, but rather than the past, let's look towards the future, to what Fable 4 could potentially look like. In this video, I wanted to put together an extensive look into exactly how I feel Fable 4 should be made and how it should look come release. This is based on a video made by LongEaredFox a while back before the announcement of Assassin's Creed Origins. He basically put together a video design document as to how the game should pan out, from the world to side quest structure to the HUD and combat. I want to try and do the same, but for Fable 4. I'll also link his video about Assassin's Creed Origins in the description below if you wanted to check that out for yourself. Of course, not everything I talk about will be present in the game, maybe none of it will be, but this is more of a video to speculate and discuss how I believe Fable 4 should be best made, and maybe give a few pointers to the developers in case they're struggling as to what the community may want to see. I won't be going over the main story in this video, as that's not really something that's relevant. However, I will be going over the world, tone, side quests, and activities, the gameplay, and so on. So without further ado, let our story begin. So to begin with talking about the open world, I feel the best place to do so would be to discuss the setting. The most recent Fable entries have been set closer to the present day than the original Fable. I think a great direction to take a new Fable on next gen is back to its roots. Take us back to a time when heroes roamed the land and fantasy was a bigger element, before technology took over Albion and things were a bit more like you'd expect from a fantasy setting. You could even set it prior to Fable 1 and have you play one of the founding members of the Heroes Guild, but that's getting a little too much into story than I'd like to in this video. So in terms of where I place this game, just imagine the Fable 1 era. No guns, no industry, just a very fantasy-based setting. To really bring Fable into a new generation, I feel it needs to be a full-scale, large, open world. I feel like a lot of people won't take to this idea, but the majority likely will. You can still have different areas of the cities like Bowerstone, the countryside like Oakvale, and the snowy mountains of Mist Peak, but you have them all in a seamless, large, full, open world Albion, adding new areas we've never seen, fleshing out areas we've seen before in older Fable titles, redesigning everything and making it seamlessly connected in an amazing, living, breathing open world. I feel this will be the world of Fable truly realized on next gen. Exploration of this world will be key to an RPG like Fable. Now, of course, there are major things such as cities, characters, and quest lines, but I want to delve into those in a separate segment later on in the video. So I wanted to go over here what different things we might be able to find while exploring the open world. First up is caves, dungeons, and tombs. I feel this would be key to any fantasy RPG. You need areas you can stumble upon such as caves or tombs or dungeons which have slightly different aesthetic, however a similar gameplay structure. You enter an area and you find some enemies or a monster of some kind which you have to fight. Maybe you could find puzzles in some, more likely in the tomb ones, and at the end you find loot, whether it be gold, armor, weapons, and so on, and the rarity of the prize of course would be based on the area of the world you're in. Most RPGs will have locations that have higher level enemies and quests than other parts of the world, and I see no reason not to have things work the same here. In the same vein as this, I see enemy hideouts working too. All over the world you could have bandit camps or other such areas in which you decide to engage in various ways. Of course you could take them out and be rewarded by the townsfolk, or perhaps join them and help them for your own personal gain, which means you'd be welcome in all camps to trade and potentially get better equipment, but this could lower your morality, causing people in villages and cities to not take to you as kindly, raising their prices or refusing to trade or talk with you. And that's the trade-off you make when taking the morality choices in the game, and I think having them systemic like this would add a lot to Fable. Now, although this may sound like a copy of The Witcher, I think it would fit very well into the world of Fable. As well as heroes helping people out with their problems, I feel monster hunting missions could really work well in the world. Across all of Albion, there could be particular legendary beasts which have been terrorizing that specific region. By finding them and killing it, you get a reward from that region and its people. By killing them, you'd be renowned as a legendary monster hunter, again adding to your morality in the game, not to mention receiving a monetary reward too. Demon doors are a huge part part of Fable, and I feel you can't make a Fable game without including them. I'd suggest they get added all across Albion, dotted around in different areas. When you come across them, they'll give you a riddle which you have to figure out as usual, whether it be bring them a certain weapon or reach a certain morality level, be a certain level of fame, or kill a particular individual. Once you've completed their riddle, I feel this should only be the first layer of the demon door. Once inside, you have a challenge that should befall the player, possibly combat, maybe a puzzle of some kind, and after that, you can then receive your high level reward. There's a few other side things I feel you can add to the world, such as collectibles if you wish, fight clubs, random events, and so on, just to pad out the world and add some more things to come across while exploring. Now, side quests are a huge part of the Fable franchise, usually having incredibly unique events and memorable characters. This is something the game has to nail. There's time enough for fetch quests or bandit camps or side activities, but the actual side quests themselves need to be unique characters, unique stories, and unique scenarios, as opposed to what a lot of games do, which is just recycled game mechanics used for a vague story reason. Think of quests like where you become part of a tabletop fantasy game in Fable 3, or transported inside of a book to portray characters from it, or the Lady Grey quests in Fable 1. Everything is a unique story with unique events rather than just the usual go here, kill this. I thought it was necessary in this section to go over different side quests I feel the game would very much benefit from. For a start, quest lines. You can have the one-off quests of course, but quest lines make the world more interesting. Either you pursue a few different quests which tell a small overarching story, such as the College of Winterhold in Skyrim as an example, or perhaps a character keeps showing up in different areas throughout the game, which is a reoccurring character with different quest objectives each time you meet them, meaning you'll slowly bond with these characters the more times you see them. Either or, it adds more diversity in quests and richer storytelling, allowing you to get invested in a side storyline. One-off memorable quests are something Fable 4 still needs to nail, but having continuous side story arcs for the player to get invested and immersed in is something I feel this next generation of Fable really needs. Jobs have always been a big part of the Fable world. From woodcutting to blacksmithing to pie making, it's been incredibly varied in what you can do to help the world in order to gain some cash. Now I feel in the next generation of Fable there's always time for these jobs, the ones I've listed and ones we've seen plenty of in Fable before, but perhaps jobs could tie into the morality system in this game. By having jobs for shops out in towns that will just give you money, as well as shady criminal businesses in which you could end up stealing from towns, bribing people for money and so on, which would be a more evil route. And then some hero jobs where you're actively helping people, but for smaller things such as helping the city guards track down a criminal or helping dispatch with some nearby monsters causing trouble. It's money, but it's also good morally for your character. By having this system, the player can partake in regular Fable style jobs in shops and taverns, but also in jobs that affect your morality either positively or negatively. Now in Fable there's always NPCs you can interact with, and as you progress you can build up relationships with these NPCs, whether that be a friendship or a romantic relationship. You can build up that with any of the NPCs in the world. It's always been a very base level thing however in Fable. You do a few actions, they'll ask you to deliver a parcel and boom, you're their friend. You do that a few more times and you can get married and have kids. Since this is the next generation of Fable games and one of the core pillars is those relationships, I feel it'd be great if you take it deeper. Give these NPCs real personalities based on predetermined traits that people can have. And whilst talking to these people, you can say things that may mean you become closer friends with them, or potentially even a romantic interest. One of the key elements in Fable is the interaction with people in the world, and I feel this is a perfect way to enhance the experience by making it deeper rather than just surface level. And from this you could gain quests. If you become friends with someone over a drink in a pub perhaps, they could confide in you with an issue they have in their life, and you could perhaps give them a hand in order to become better friends with them. But these quests would only reveal themselves to you after you get to know these people better. Having this be the case would give the player more incentive to build relationships in the world, and would give relationship building missions more depth rather than delivering a package in return for a love interest. It would feel far more organic and ingrained in the game systems. Now the first thing regarding gameplay I feel we need to touch upon is the morality system involved in appearance of weapons and armor. I feel the player shouldn't be too heavily affected by your morality in terms of your own appearance, just due to the fact that it can make your character look bad in some instances. Maybe some slight influences such as eye color or your general facial expression, but I feel most of the morality changes should occur to your armor, weapons and abilities. Now, what exactly do I mean by this? Well, there should be base armor and base weapons you can collect throughout the game and equip to your character. Depending on your morality, this will morph the armor and weapons over time. Say you pick up a helmet, it'll be the default look. The more you wear it, the more it changes depending on your actions, and the same will apply to your weapons. The way this change would happen, however, I don't feel should be dynamic, as that could get incredibly irritating with your weapons and armor just shifting all the time mid-gameplay. I feel as you gain XP, you can choose to buy skill points in the skill trees for different things within the game. Once you buy a skill point for your sword, for example, that will then evolve it to the next stage of stats, but also appearance, so a level 2 sword will look different from a level 1 sword, etc. But not only that, your current morality level at the same time as leveling up your sword will affect its look too. So by the end of the game, if you continue to use the same sword, it'll be molded into an appearance that is the outcome of hours and hours of your adventures in this world, and it'll be personal to you and your character. Talking about character, I feel Fable's focus has never been on having a set character for the narrative. Sure, Fable 3 had the prince and his lines were voiced, but it was always you that molded him, it was never the writing. There was nothing that made the protagonist of Fable so unique that they couldn't be switched for literally anybody else. In Fable 4, I feel we need to go full RPG. We already choose the outcome of things and our morality and our gender, why not allow us create a character fully from scratch? You can have the character be voiced, which is something I liked about Fable 3, but probably more so in this game. Think Commander Shepard from Mass Effect. It's always Shepard, but you can make him or her your own, and doing this for Fable would be tremendous, allowing us to truly play as our own created character. Combat in Fable has always had 3 pillars: magic, swordplay, and range. I would have Fable 4 be no different from this formula. Starting off, I feel like magic was very well used in the previous Fable games. However, I'd take it a step further. I feel magic should be able to be switched by selecting through a quick magic wheel that will slow down time, kind of similar to The Witcher 3 for selecting which spell. However, magic in Fable 4 should adapt over time. The more magic you use, the better you get, and depending on if you're using it for heroic or evil deeds, it will morph how the spell will look. If you do bad things, your spell will look more evil. If you do good things, your spells will look heroic, so it's not just weapons and armor that morph, it's also the magic and your abilities too. On top of this, I like from Fable 3 the combination of different spells. However, I feel we can take this a step further. I believe once you gain XP, you could be able to use that XP to combine spells to create new combination spells. For example, combine fire and ice to create a fire and ice spell, or create lightning and blades to create a lightning and blades spell that is then its own thing selectable from the magic wheel. You could then combine those spells with each other to truly create unique looking spells that, joined with your morality, again makes your playstyle and experience totally unique from other people's, which was always the central focus of Fable. On top of this, I feel there should be more than just offensive spells. Spells for defense would be useful too, such as shields and healing magic, which again can be combined potentially for different effects and so on, just to add variation to the magic systems. The swordplay in Fable has never been necessarily bad, but it's never been outstanding either. I feel taking the combat style of the old games and giving it a bit of a new look of paint could really work wonders. Make the dodging tighter, the blocking more responsive, and the attacks quicker would easily improve the combat tenfold. Perhaps something similar to a Batman Arkham or a Middle-earth type combat, but more hitbox based like The Witcher 3, allowing us to string sword combos together with ranged and magic without ruining the flow too. That'd make for some incredible moments, I'm sure. Finally, ranged is something I feel not a lot of people tend to use in Fable. It's something you use quickly in combat from time to time, but never properly utilize. It takes a backseat if anything, and I find it hard to avoid something like that given that Fable is a melee combat focused game. But I feel allowing us to use a bow and arrow from distance to potentially pick off enemies at range could easily give more depth to the ranged combat within the game, using the bow similar to the newer Assassin's Creed games or the Middle-earth series. Now, traversal is a big part of any open world game, but I feel one method that makes the most sense is horses. I mean, of course every open world game has horses, but I mean, what else are we going to go with here? You could buy a horse from a stable and customize it however you see fit, and buy new horses as you progress to get better stats. This horse would then be used to transport you all across the world as you explore Albion. Basic, but effective. Of course, fast travel will be a thing by using your guild seal, so no need for signposts or carriages to fast travel with, just use your guild seal to transport you to a location you've previously visited. Now, dialogue has never been a huge part of Fable, as you use actions to interact with the world, and choices are made by selecting an option when the game allows you to do so. In Fable 4, I feel we need to have deep dialogue systems, with dialogue trees and the ability to truly interact with NPCs in the world, whether that be in quests or just while exploring and interacting with NPCs. We should be able to talk to everybody and leave our impression on the world. This would also allow for deeper choices to be made, similar to that of the Paragon Renegade system in Mass Effect. The more good dialogue choices you make, the more hero options in dialogue will be available to you, whereas the more evil choices you make, the more evil choices open up in dialogue, giving a sense of genuine character progression and development depending on how you interact with characters in the world. Morality is one of the very central points of the Fable franchise, and I feel it should factor in heavily into the gameplay. We've already talked about how it would affect dialogue and appearance along with magic, etc., but I feel it should also affect the game world. If you do bad things, there'll be consequences to those bad things. Perhaps at first people will try to kill you, but once you go further down that path, everyone will know your name and fear you, so you'll be able to commit crimes without fear of being stopped. But on occasion, of course, people are going to try and hunt you down for a reward and try and play the hero. Alternatively, you could be the good guy and eventually people will look up to you and come to you for help. Bandits might try and seek you out and kill you for causing havoc with their criminal business and so on. Of course, there could also be monetary gain from shops, allowing you to purchase things for a lower rate, but you get the gist of it. It needs to have a great effect on interactions in the world itself. In terms of leveling, I feel we need 3 main skill trees: magic, melee, and range. There could potentially be skills for general things such as your ability to blacksmith or talk to people better, but the main ones I want to focus on are magic, melee, and range. I see XP as a commodity to level up. Once you level up, you gain a skill point. Those skill points can then be used to buy skills in any of the skill trees. For example, in the melee skill tree, you might buy a skill which increases your combo chains. You can do more combos in a string of attacks, and you could maybe pump 5 skill points into that before it's maxed out, if you wanted to max out the amount of attacks you can do in one combo chain. For magic, possibly, there is a similar skill for combining spells. Purchasing it once means you can combine spells a maximum of 1 time. However, the more skills you put into it could mean you can combine spells and mix and match them a maximum of 5 times to truly create some incredible displays of magic, and it all depends on what kind of route you take. I don't want to go through every skill because that would be pointless, but you get the point, and in upgrading skills, this would in turn change the look of the weapon every time you buy a skill point, taking into account the level of the weapon and your morality for unique weapons by the end of the game. Fable being an RPG, economics have always factored into the game world and your interactions, be it properties, shops, or the way characters work. It's always a big part of the games. For a start, let's talk about properties. In the Fable franchise, there are always houses which you can purchase to own. Once you've done this, you can upgrade them and choose to rent them, move in, or just sell them. Now, I feel this is a great foundation moving into Fable 4. Allow us to purchase every building in the world, of course some are shops and we'll talk about that later, but for now let's stick to housing. Allow us, like the older Fable games, to buy any house and then choose to rent it out to people or live in it ourselves. However, this is where I feel the next generation would really benefit. Allow us to fully customize the interior of our homes, with furniture, flooring, wallpaper, etc. Allow us to fully deck out where we live and move things around to our liking. Fable always felt like the Elder Scrolls had a baby with The Sims, so let's go all in and let us customize our homes to our liking. Although this isn't exactly economics, I thought I'd mention the way characters could possibly act within the world. We need characters to all have their own day and night cycle to make the world convincing. The game has always had unique NPCs for each person, and so giving them a day and night cycle would work great. I believe older Fable games actually had this, but don't quote me. In doing so, you'd have to plan activities around this. People wouldn't be in shops at night, and during the day, robbing places is going to be harder if you were that way inclined. Just adding small details to how you tackle things in the world. Now, shops are a huge part of Fable, whether it's working in them, purchasing goods from them, or owning them for a profit. I wanted to go over the different shops I'd see in the game and what their function would be. A blacksmith would be there for the player to purchase and upgrade armor and weapons, be it a sword or an axe, or perhaps a bow and all the armor you can think of. On top of this, there will be blacksmith jobs, which may involve a smithing minigame, as well as possible fetch quests for raw minerals. The tailor in the game would be for outfits, which would be different to armor. Armor would go over the top of your current clothing you'd be wearing. Here you could also dye your clothes and customize exactly how you want to look before purchasing. Here you could also hand in possible appropriate items you find in the world for a reward. The apothecary would be for purchasing potions and potential magic assistance, allowing your strength to increase, etc. Here you could also sell herbs that you found out in the world. A barber would be used for changing your hair and facial hair of your character to suit your liking. A furniture store will be used to purchase different items for use in your home, beds, chairs, and everything in between. I see the shop as also being accessible through the edit menu in your house for ease of access, so you don't have to run back and forth to the shop every time you want new furniture. A tattoo parlor will be available to purchase tattoos for your character. Obviously. A stable could exist in different towns in order to purchase new mounts with better stamina or looks. Since Fable games in the past allowed you to have a dog, I feel a pet shop would be a nice addition. Perhaps you could buy a dog or maybe a different animal, which could come in various different breeds, and different pets would have different perks. A bank would be a nice place to store money if you don't want it on your person in order to gain interest on your money, but also a place that you could rob if you wanted to. A pawn shop or a general store would work similar to the old games, being a place you can sell the odd trinket and perhaps pick up some interesting items too. I imagine food stores will be available throughout the world, allowing you to purchase food to heal you while in combat. Also, potential kitchen jobs would be available from these locations. Jewelry shops would allow you to purchase different types of jewelry, which can increase various statistics. Finally, pubs. Pubs, it will work similar to previous Fable games. You can go in and have a drink, talk to the locals, or perhaps have a bartending job to earn some money. On top of this, all of these shops will be available for purchase when you have the correct money. You can invest in them and then earn money in return from the money those shops make. I don't feel this system needs to be incredibly more deep than it was in previous Fable games, but perhaps there's some creative elements they could add in on the way. And the final section I wanted to go over in this video is the cooperative mode. Fable has always leaned towards allowing co-op play. Now, I'm not saying the game should be built around this, as I see Fable 4 as primarily a single player experience. However, if you wanted to, players could use their save to load their character into a friend's world and play quests together and level up too, similarly to Fable 3, which just adds that classic co-op element into Fable. Who knows if Microsoft will take any of what I said and put it into the game. Who knows how close my predictions and wish lists will be to the final product of Fable 4. Not much can be said until we see the game, but if even half of what I suggest makes it into the game, I'd be blown away. I feel this direction is really something they can nail and make memorable rather than just copying The Witcher 3. Fable is unique, and it has to stay that way. Thanks so much for watching. I put a lot of work into this and I appreciate any support you can show, whether it be a like, a sub, a share, or checking out any of the other content I make on my channel, as I try to put the same amount of work into everything I make. I also have a Patreon where I put out exclusive content and posts, as well as of course you can support me more directly in making these videos. Thanks a lot everyone, and I'll see you next time.